Now let's turn to a new initiative by the Imo State government to try to harness a hub of business talent on the community level and to deepen the local economy. It's called the One Kindred, One Business Initiative, or OKOBI, and its aim is to provide a platform that will advance community-based businesses from art to agriculture. It's a program that promises to scale up the community by tapping into their skills, creating business value for them, and increasing productivity across the state, whilst building a partnership ecosystem between the state government and the communities. So, in a world of limited funding, poverty and corruption, in which it is tough to survive and where innumerable government initiatives have failed to transform people's life chances and to create wealth, just how does this OKOBI venture work? What's likely to be different this time? Well, for more on this, I'm joined now on the line from Owerri by the Chief Economic Advisor to the Imo State Government, Kenneth Amaeshi, who is also a Professor of Business and Sustainability at the University of Edinburgh in Scotland. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, Mr. Amaeshi. And as briefly as possible, tell us what this OKOBI initiative is and how it works.
Thank you, Charles, for having me. The One Kindred, One Business Initiative simply means group-owned businesses. So it's the idea of moving away from individual-owned businesses to group-owned businesses. And it fits in very well with the communal spirit among the Igbos. So think about your typical village in the Igbo community where people did things for themselves. So ranging from rural electrification to issues of town halls and even churches. So what the One Kindred, One Business Initiative aims to do is to tap into this communal spirit and transfer that to economic productivity. Because most of the things that were done through communal efforts were socially good, but not economically productive.
Well, that's a very interesting thing, but it's a very broad definition that you've given us there. So perhaps you could expand that a little bit, exactly how it is actually going to work, how that community spirit is going to be translated into a kind of economic business environment.
Okay, put it in a way that, one, there is high unemployment, and unemployment here is a social problem in Africa. So not only in Imo State, but in other parts of Africa, you have high youth unemployment. So what we're trying to do here, or the state government, through the initiative of the governor, Senator Hope Uzodimma, is to think of how to tackle unemployment head-on, but at the same time empowering people. So if you think about your typical economy in Imo State, for example, the state is a major employer. So we struggle to find companies that employ more than 250 people. So that, in a sense, gives you an idea of what the economy is. So in order to tackle high unemployment, the Imo State government has encouraged the development of skills in different forms. So one of them being the 300,000 program on digital skills. But not everyone will be in the digital space. So the government has, in its wisdom, also thought about encouraging groups to come together. So one of the ways to form an OKOBE business or to qualify, the criteria include that you have to be a registered business. So in this case, is moving from informal sector to the formal sector. Secondly, it has to be profit-oriented. So this is not charity by any measure. So it's proper business. It has to be employment-oriented. So you have people who start a business, profit is the only thing. But here we're saying it's profit plus employment creation. And the third thing, or the fourth thing, is that it has to be in Imo State. So it has to be group-owned, it has to be registered, it has to be profit-oriented, it has to be employment-oriented at the same time, it has to be in Imo State. So these are the things that will qualify one to be an OKOBI business.
Right. I mean, it sounds like a thing that can be driven on an individual level. I mean, the impression I got was that you would go to communities, ask them to come up with a business idea that they think would work within their community environment, and you would then assess that, do a thorough and detailed assessment, and if it meets the criteria, you would then sort of help them to develop that business, and that business would become sort of a community-based, community-owned business.
So you're correct, Charles, in one way. And the point is that the governor this week, on Monday, suggested that he would like to see every community in Imo State have a business. So there are 665 communities in Imo State. So the government has now challenged different communities to come up with their own businesses, which now the government would support. So the point here is that as you have your state-owned enterprises, say governments have businesses, take for example the NNPC, or the Concord Hotel in Imo State, or the Adapam in Imo State. These are state-owned enterprises. And if you go beyond Africa, Equinor, which used to be Statoil, is a Norwegian company, and is doing very well. You also think about the Chinese state-owned enterprises. So what we're trying to do here is that you can also have village-owned enterprises, town-owned enterprises, local government-owned enterprises. So the Imo State government has challenged the different communities in Imo State to think about creating their own businesses based on their competitive advantage as well as their comparative advantage. So that way they come up with business proposals that are bankable. So this is not just government trying to dish out money recklessly in that sense or politicizing it, but it's about focusing on businesses that have potentials to make profit as well as create jobs. So these will be evaluated properly, and then the government can think of how to support them. So what we see here are two different things. One is one that is about government incentivized, and then the other part is where communities, groups are also creating their businesses. So if you have Concord Hotel in Imo State or Adapam, it doesn't stop other people creating their own businesses. So whilst the government is keen to encourage community-owned businesses through the 665 communities in Imo State, we need more than 665 businesses in Imo State to empower people and also create the sort of employment and job opportunities we would like to see.
Well, as I said, it sounds jolly interesting. I mean, is this an entirely government-driven project, or is it also supported by the private sector? Because I'm thinking, it's going to cost a lot of money, and I'm wondering where that support is going to come from.
I think it's a mixture. The government can act as an enabler. So this is by no means government taking over business creation at the local level. So it's about empowerment, about encouraging grassroots economic development. So like I mentioned earlier, our people, that's the people of Imo State, and the Igbos in general, have this communal spirit. So it's already there, so it's nothing completely new. So what is happening here is that we want to transfer that communal spirit from social projects to economic projects. And the government is trying to incentivize different communities to think about participating in what I may call democratization of the economy. But on the other hand, you also have companies, individual actors that are willing to support these businesses. Take, for example, companies that are in Imo State who might want to use it as a form of their corporate social responsibility. The traditional corporate social responsibility relies a lot on philanthropy. And philanthropy here might be building a school or sinking a borehole or doing something for the community. But in a way, it doesn't solve the problems of the communities because it's about giving them fish as opposed to teaching them how to fish. So companies can adopt the OKOBI, the One Kindred, One Business initiative, as a way to teach communities how to fish by empowering them, helping them build businesses that would enable them be much more independent as opposed to always coming back to the companies for one support or the other.
Right. And of
so
course,
to answer your question,
yeah. Go ahead.
So, sorry, to answer your question, there is a space for the government as well as private actors, as well as individuals. And it's also good to mention that we are seeing a lot of our people in diaspora seeing this as an opportunity to help their communities. Because for every job you have in Imo State, and I would say typically in Nigeria, you have many more people, or a lot of people dependent on that job. So what happens in a way is that instead of getting that odd phone calls from your people to say, help me do this or do that, if you're able to teach them how to fish, it will then help you also enjoy whatever you have. And we also work from the philosophy that a candle does not lose anything by lighting another candle. So this is a way of helping people and also empowering them to be independent.
What are some of the requests that you've got from the communities in that regard? I mean, in sort of the ideas that are coming from them, or is it early days yet?
At the moment, we have about 300 of such businesses. So this is before the government come on board, I mean, with the announcement this week to suggest that communities should be encouraged to think about their own businesses. So there are existing what you call like group-owned businesses or OKOBE businesses, about 300 of them. So they are into different things. Most of them are agri-businesses, but they're also into services. So we have those that are into livestock, those that are into farming. It could be cassava, it could be maize, it could be any other thing. But one thing here is that we're allowing people to be imaginative. Say, for example, beekeeping, we never thought it was something that would flourish. And it doesn't cost a lot to invest in beekeeping. All you need to do is to create a hive. How much does it cost to create a hive? 30,000 naira. So with, say, 3 million naira, you're able to create 100 hives. And out of these hives, within a space of 6 months, you will get a lot of honey, as well as the wax that will be profitable. So we are beginning to find things we didn't think about, or things we didn't imagine would thrive in our communities. Think about mushroom, for example. We didn't think of it. Think about things like grass cutter. So if you go to your typical restaurant in Imo State, you may want a grass cutter. In our local parlance, it's called nchi, anunchi, right? So, but where do they come from? Where does this anunchi come from? So most of the time, they come from outside Imo State, but we can also grow them. So we have a hospitality sector in Imo State that can be a center of attraction and create some of these opportunities. Because what we found out through our study is that most of the things consumed by the hospitality sector come from outside Imo State. So these are already opportunities that Imo people can tap into. And communities are coming forward with ways of doing this.
Very interesting. And you talked about I thought the idea of sort of beekeeping and all that, they're fairly innovative ideas. What are the more outlandish business plans that you've come across that you decided, nope, we're not going to do this one?
No, we don't discourage people. So the idea here is about learning. Say, for example, I spoke to a community recently, and they told me they wanted to bring in granules from the north. I mean, it's a very interesting idea, right? But there are about 10 of them who have come together to do this business. So the idea here, and I challenge them and to ask them to say, well, if you want to do this business, think about a business that will give you a profit that will enable you to pay each of you, say, 25,000, 30,000 naira every month. So if there are 10 of you, then you're expecting at least a profit of 350,000 naira. That way you can pay yourselves 30,000 each and then have 50,000 left. So we looked at the granite business and I asked them, how much would you take to bring granite from the north, sell it in Imo State, and make a profit of about 350,000 naira a month. So they told me that, well, it will cost about 5 million to 6 million naira to do that amount of groundnut that will give them the profit we are looking at. And I asked them, could there be a better way of using this 6 million naira, right? So in a way, it challenges them. And I asked them, what about going into palm oil business? With half of that, about 3 million or even 2 million, you can start a reasonable palm oil business that will be able to give you the amount of money you need a month as a profit. So we don't discourage people, no matter how outlandish the ideas are, but we work with them to sort of get to the end in mind. So if you want to make a profit of 350,000 naira every month, what is that business opportunity that will take you there? I think for us, we focus more on that end and the solution as opposed to discouraging people.
Indeed, but of course it's one thing to produce materials and to produce things, quite another to be able to sell them successfully. I mean, is there a marketing strategy that exists as part of this initiative in a country where there is often poor access to markets?
Fantastic question, Charles. So what we're trying to do here is also to bring other actors on board. So we are not leaving the local farmers or local producers to their own devices. So we have companies. So for example, we have a very good tech company in Abuja. I don't want to mention names unless you want me to, but they help to link local farmers to urban markets. So they take produce from Imo State, some of the rural areas, and give them Lagos or Abuja urban market prices. So that way, they overcome this barrier or even the challenges of moving their products from the rural areas to the urban areas. Because even if they sell in the rural area, they're likely not to command as much premium they would command if they sold in urban areas. So there are other actors that we're beginning to see come on board. So it's not just about the government or the farmers or the local people themselves, but what we are seeing is an emergence of an ecosystem that is very, very exciting. We have also seen some technology companies that have come to us to think of creating the platforms for these local businesses to sell their produce, and even for them to have access to finance, because one of the things they talk about is the money they need to do the things they do. Say, for example, I have a community that came to me. They have 7 hectares of land, and they want to do cassava. And it will cost them about 700,000 to develop 1 hectare. So in all, that's about 21 million naira. But they don't have the money. So we are thinking of a platform that will enable them front load some of these projects, which would then attract investors to think or to consider them. And some of these investors can as well be their sisters and brothers who are not in Imo State. They may be farther afield, but they see local projects they can invest in. So instead of giving money to people and always attending to their needs, they can empower them through direct investment in their projects. So these are different ways of overcoming the challenges of ruralness and linking them to the global economy.
Right. Well, I mean, we're almost out of time, so very briefly, whatever happened to all the youths, reportedly in their thousands, that Governor Uzodimma had said, I think he said it about 10 months ago or a year ago, he would send abroad for training and jobs. I mean, where are things with that?
Yeah, the good thing is that the governor, as of last month, has signed a deal with the European Small SME Digital Alliance that has about 45,000 members. So even if they decide to give us 10% of their jobs, so there we have about, I mean, he talked about 4,000 youths working for European companies. So even if they gave us 10% of that, that's 4,500. So he signed this deal with them, which will include mentoring, freelancing, because they can offshore some of their jobs to youth in Imo State. Because what is happening is that they find that it is much more expensive these days to deal with the Eastern Europeans as well as India. So Imo State is emerging as a digital hub, not only in Nigeria, but maybe in West Africa, given what the governor, Senator Hope Uzodimma, is trying to do with the digital economy strategy. So that promise is very much alive, And we're beginning to see the opportunities there coming from Europe. And he signed the deal now. And hopefully before September, October, there will be a robust strategy to tap into that.
Well, we'll keep an eye on that because that's something that a lot of people want to hear something about. But I want to thank you very much indeed for illuminating us with your ideas there and what you say you're doing in Imo State. Kenneth Amaeshi is the Chief Economic Advisor to the Imo State Government. He's also a Professor of Business and Sustainability at the University of Edinburgh in Scotland, and he was talking to me on the line there from Owerri. That's it for this edition of Arise Prime Time. Join us again tomorrow. From me and the entire team here in Abuja and Owerri, bye-bye and thank you for watching.